Hello and welcome to The Gestaltist. This is part 3 of our intro to ABM, account-based marketing. Part 3 is all about data mining. So just as a quick recap, part 1 was intro to the challenge that ABM and account-based marketing solves. Part 2, we talked about the customer analysis. So really digging deep into the data of the customers that you've had in the past for essentially the last 3 years, looking at all of the demographic, psychographic, other things that we could pull, augmenting that data to come up with these clusters that really gives a good view of who your clients are. Now what we want to do in part 3 is talking about how to go build a list of other similar organizations that you can now go after and direct all of your sales and marketing effort towards. So let's get into building the data. When we looked at the demographic of the last example in part 2, we narrowed it down and we said, okay, in this scenario, we found that we most often work with companies that have 5,001 plus employees, and that's 5,001 plus based on LinkedIn criteria. So we can now go into LinkedIn and search for those. We also identified multiple industries based on the LinkedIn list that we looked at, all the categories and industries from the LinkedIn dropdown. We're able to say, okay, these are the top industries that we have delivered results to. So now that we know our top industries, we can start to get some counts and mine this information. So the first thing that we do is we take all of those industries and we go start doing some searching. Now I use LinkedIn Navigator, which is a premium version of LinkedIn. You can use lots of other tools for this. I just find that LinkedIn has a lot of up-to-date data. And so we're going to start looking and using the criteria that we've built. So for example, the company headcount is going to give you that 5,001 plus. So in LinkedIn, you have 5,001 to 10,000, then you have 10,000 plus. We're going to check both of those boxes. Same thing with industries. We're able to add the industry that we want, like that top one of hospital and healthcare. And we can dig in and start to understand, based on these criteria, how many of these actually exist? How large is our target audience? And then we can make some decisions from there. So when I showed you that information, we go through and we do all these searches in LinkedIn to understand how many organizations fit this criteria. Now, for this particular search, what we found was there's a wide degree of companies, quantities of companies in each one of these, a wide variation. Example, for hospital and healthcare, there's 810 organizations across the United States that have 5,001 employees. And then you look at the bottom, aviation and aerospace, which is another client that we've served in the past, at least in this example data set, and there's only 78 of those. Now, it's up to you to make the decision. Do you want to go in the very niche space, or do you want to start with something that gives you a much broader audience to go after, even though you are doing some industry specialization? So let's say that we started with hospital and healthcare. We can go find all 810 of those companies, and then we can start to find the titles of the people that we need within those organizations. So these are the actual counts from LinkedIn of everybody that fits this criteria, 5,001 plus, United States, and in these industries. The next step is, what titles are you looking for? So what titles really get you into those organizations? Now, in part 2, where we did the analysis, we look at the companies and their demographics, but we also look at the titles and say, okay, well, what does the sphere of influence look like? Is it a title in which we're always going to the CEO and they're actually making the decision? Or is it really that we're working with other people in the organization and it gets rolled up to the CEO, but none of our salespeople actually ever talk to a CEO of companies of this size? So who do we have to go after? So again, you're going to take those industries and then you're going to start to narrow it down and say, okay, give me the people in LinkedIn that match one of these 3 or 4 titles. And then we're going to start to build the list around that. That's going to give us a very clear picture of what type of people we're going after. Now, how do we get this done? Well, again, you can have Zoom Info, you can have LinkedIn. There's all kinds of places to do your data mining, and there's all kinds of tools to do this. What I've generally found is there's plenty of tools to do it. There's plenty of information out there, but what you really need is the person who is going to execute on this, the person who's going to manage all those tools, know the strategy, and go build those lists and prune that data, because it's a lot of work that goes into it. What we found is we use things like Upwork. So there's ways that we can go on Upwork and say, here's what all we want. And there's resources on Upwork that specialize in list building. They already have all of the tools. They're paying for the tools. They know how to get it together. Another thing that you want to do is really create a process document around what information you would like to have them gather. Because if you just ask for the generic info, a lot of times you may not get the result that you expected. It seems very easy on the surface to ask for this information, but once you've actually done it yourself and you've dug into that, there's a good bit of nuance into the information that's provided. Again, the details matter. You want to make sure that they know the exact details. One of the things I'm going to do for this video, and on this video page when you see it on our website, is you're going to see a downloadable PDF that highlights the areas and the data that we want. So we actually go on to LinkedIn, Zoom Info, whatever type of tool we're having them use or that they're using, and we put a red box and say, this is where the industry is. When I say get the industry, this is exactly where it shows up. This is what I want. When I say the head count, this is exactly where it shows up. So we create a really good process document that outlines what information we want them to gather. Now, there's a lot of tools that are out there. These are, again, in the Gestaltist fashion, just sharing what we're doing, what we use. There's all kinds of tools, but we're going to share some of the ones that we use on a daily basis. So we're big fans of HubSpot. We have HubSpot, and that's where we feed all of our information into, no matter what tool that we're using. Linked Hub is another one of those where you can actually go through LinkedIn and gather information, which automatically pushes it into HubSpot. And then you can work with LinkedIn on, the messaging and the other things by using your LinkedIn premium account. So we are using a paid account for this. Hunter.io is a place where you can go validate and get email addresses. And then datavalidation.com actually links into HubSpot very smoothly. And you can gather these lists that you have in HubSpot, push it over to data validation, and they'll do validation around the emails and the information that you have to tell you, yes, this is a verified email. These are some other emails. We wouldn't really recommend you sending to these because of multiple different reasons, and it's going to mess up your spam number, or you'll get flagged as spam, or it's just a bad email address. So they do a lot of validation around the information before you ever actually start the outbound email campaigns, ad roll targeting campaigns, whatever it might be. So those are just some of the tools that exist out there. And in in a forward-looking webinar that we're doing, recording that I'm doing, I'll be sharing other tools that are available to you depending on the size of the organization that you have. Some things to know about data gathering, some very important aspects, just to give you some bounds. There's studies out there all around this information. About 30% of this information that you're going to gather expires each year. So if you think about your marketing information and your sales data, whether it's in your marketing automation, your email marketing, your CRM tools, wherever this data is going to be stored, 30% expires on a yearly basis. So taking an ABM approach, taking a data-driven approach, really takes some focus and understanding around the data that you have in order to get the results that you're looking for. If you think that you're going to go buy a list off of somebody on the internet and it's going to be a great list, everything's going to work, and you're just going to have marketing heaven and sales heaven, it usually doesn't work like that. Even the data that they're giving you, you don't know when it was last validated. So just set the expectation with yourself that this is going to be a little bit of an ongoing process to manage the data. 30% goes out each year. Now, when you go out to Upwork, or if you're outsourcing any of this list building, your cost is going to vary usually between 25 cents a record up to $2 per record. And the reason that varies is the level of experience, the tools, the number of columns that you're gathering. So if you're getting very generic data, let's say from Zoom info, from LinkedIn, or just Google searches, you can get as low as 25%, but you're really getting like first name, last name, who they work for. You might or might not get an email. You're definitely not getting a direct dial. So there's ways that you can gather that, and you're getting maybe 5 columns of information per each contact or per each company. Now, what you start to get into up to $2 a record is the companies and the organizations that have all of these tools. They're paying for expensive tools on an ongoing basis, and all of these tools are giving you things like validated emails. They've already gone through the validation process, maybe with datavalidation.com or any other tools that are out there. They're validating and ensuring that they're accurate, and they're also providing direct dials, which are notoriously hard to get. And on top of that, when you pay more, as you find bad data in bad records in that data set, bad contacts, bad emails, the companies that charge more will also replace them for you. So there's a little bit of give and take on the process, whereas if they don't charge a lot, there's just no room for that. So important bounds to keep in mind on what the different and varying levels are and what you're going to pay. The next thing is, I would expect 20+% of these emails to just be wrong. These emails are coming from all different locations and sources, and you're going to send emails and they're going to bounce. So you have to understand that when you're doing the list building, you want some sort of process that's going to validate that list. And we're going to talk about that in future videos, how we go through validating this information in our outbound campaigns. But just understand that, again, you're not going to get a 100% correct list. That could be a source of frustration at the beginning if you just don't set expectations based on the list building that you're doing. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, direct dial numbers are really hard to get. So there's some services that are known for getting direct dials, and other ones are just going to be tough. So you have to go through the phone tree. There's, again, various different amounts you can pay for this, and it's up to you to make the decision around what really matters and how you're paying for it, how you're pruning the data. So those are just a few of the things to know when you're dealing with the data building and the data gathering process. So with that things to know, that's all I have for the data mining portion of part 3. We hope you enjoyed this. We want to keep it short and sweet. Look forward to presenting part 4 to you coming up soon. Thank you.